Okay, today we're going to be talking about section 4.6, which is quadratic functions. And basically what we're doing here is we are going to complete the square on them. What does it mean to complete the square? It means that you are going to be used it to find the vertex form as well as the x-intercepts. Vertex form is y equals a times x minus h quantity squared plus k. That is the form that your brain knows and understands up, down, left, right, stretch, compress, reflect. The x-intercepts is the point on the graph where it crosses the x-axis. If it's crossing the x-axis, then it's at the point x comma 0. Now, a brief overview of what we're talking about here. Completing the square is used to find the vertex, it's used to factor, and it's used to find the x-intercepts. It's not a fun procedure, but it does have its reasons for doing it. When can we use this? You can only use it when its degree is 2, meaning the highest exponent. The types of answers that you are going to get are going to be rational answers, answers that make sense to you, like 1, 0, 1/2, or 0.5, and then irrational numbers that are not going to make sense to you, which are the square root numbers, square root of 2, square root of 10. Okay? Now, what your brain needs to always remember whenever you're completing the square is that the leading coefficient, which is the number in front of the x squared, must always be 1. So here's some steps. Step 1. We're going to take the constant term over to the other side. The constant term is the c value. It's the value at the end without the variable. Then your leading coefficient must be 1. If it is not 1, you are going to make it be 1 by dividing both numbers and pulling it out as a GCF. Okay? You're going to do this by division. Then we're going to take the coefficient of the x term, and we're going to divide that by 2. And I'm going to call this our sidebar. This is where we're going to do all of our thinking at. We're going to take that number and we're going to square it and add it to both sides. Now, this is where everybody usually messes up, is because you forget to multiply by what your leading coefficient was. So if you factored out a coefficient of 2, you have to multiply it by 2. And I'll get into that as we go over there further. And then you're going to have the x plus b over 2 quantity squared. So you kind of just have to jump in and do it. So let's go ahead and do this. Tonight's homework look exactly like these examples. So as you are doing your homework tonight, it's super important that you go ahead and watch these examples if you get stuck again, okay? So directions. Solve each quadratic equation by completing the square. Whenever it says to solve, that means you are simply finding the x-intercepts. So step 1, it says to take the constant term over to the other side. What is the constant term? It is 2. So I'm going to have x squared plus 4x, and I'm going to subtract the 2 over. Okay? Then the next step says the leading coefficient must be 1. So my leading coefficient of my x squared term is 1x squared. That's perfect. That's what makes me very happy. We leave that alone. Step 3, it says take the coefficient of the x term and divide it by 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our sidebar. Our sidebar is where we are thinking and doing all of our calculational work. So the sidebar says we're going to take our b value and divide it by 2 and square it. Our b value in this problem is going to be the value 4. Okay? So we're going to take 4 and divide it by 2, which gives me a 2, and then we're going to square that to give you 4. What this means is you are going to be adding 4 to both sides. So I have x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to negative 2 plus 4. Now, the equal sign is a scale. You have got to keep that scale balanced. So if you drop 4 units on the left side, you have to drop 4 units on the right-hand side. Now, these 3 terms right here, from what we learned yesterday in our worksheet 1, is that is going to be rewritten as x. We keep this sign with this number. Remember, we learned that yesterday. X plus 2 quantity squared is equal to, then combine like terms here gives us a 2. Okay? Now what we did is we just completed the square on this. We made this so much easier on ourselves. Now we're going to solve this. If I wanted to put this in vertex form, I would simply bring this minus 2 over to the other side. But I don't want to put it in vertex form. I want to solve this. So how do I get rid of the power of 2? The way I get rid of the power of 2 is by simply taking the square root of both sides. Power and root cancel out. I have x plus 2 is equal to, as soon as you take the square root, you have to do plus or minus square root of 2. Now I'm solving for x, so how do I get rid of the 2 on the same side as the x? The way I'm going to do that is by subtracting 2. So -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 is going to be our lovely x-intercepts. Okay? Now remember, you can graph all of these out and you can find out what those x-intercepts are by doing this. Let me show you one thing here. If you go to Desmos, click on Graphing Calculator, and then we're going to graph our original problem, which is x squared plus 4x plus 2. And hit enter. This number right here and this number right here. You can literally click on those and you can get those. Okay? It gives me -4.14 and -5.86. Now, if I pull up my calculator, I can type in there -2 plus the square root of 2. And hit enter. There's one of them. And then make this one minus. There's the other one. Is that what I was supposed to get on my graph? Those numbers are absolutely right, so I know that my calculations were done correctly, which means this is the correct answer. So you can always check these on Desmos to make sure that what you're doing algebraically is correct compared to what you get graphically. So let's do this procedure again. Step 1, take the constant term over. So I'm going to simply have this x squared plus 6x is equal to 3. Step 2, your leading coefficient must be 1. It already is, so I'm good to go. Step 3 is sidebar. Sidebar is where I'm going to do all of my numerical calculations of b divided by 2 squared. So what is my b value here? My b value is going to be 6. So I'm going to take my 6 and divide it by 2 to give me a 3. I'm going to square that, and that gives me 9. 9 is what I'm going to drop on each side of the scale. So I'm going to have an x squared plus 6x plus a 9 is equal to a 3 plus a 9. On the left-hand side, these 3 terms, I keep the middle term, and then I use the sign right here of the 3, and I'm going to have x plus 3 squared is equal to a 12. So again, I could bring the 12 over and put it into vertex form, but I do not want to. I want to continue solving. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Power and root cancel out to give me x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 12. Now, previously when I taught you this, we went ahead and we used the factor finder to find all of the factors of 12, and I'm looking for the perfect square factors. So that's going to be 3 times 4. So I have x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus 4 times 3. The square root of 4 comes out as a 2. So I have x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus 2 square roots of 3. I need to subtract the 3 over. So I have x is equal to -3 plus or minus 2 square roots of 3. That is now done. So I've done 2 examples where your leading coefficient is going to be 1. Now what happens when your leading coefficient is not 1? It gets a little bit more chaotic, but it's still okay. Our constant term must be taken over the other side. It already is, so we're good to go. Step 2, your leading coefficient must be 1. It is not. So I'm going to pull out a factor of 2 out of the 2x squared and the 16x by doing division. 2 divided by 2 is a 1x squared. 16x divided by 2 is an 8x. And I recopy the 22. Now I have a new a and a new b. My a is 1 and my b value is 8. I'm still going to do sidebar to do my mental calculations. So I have b divided by 2, so that's going to be 8 over 2. 8 over 2 is 4, squared is 16. However, I'm going to drop that 16 on the inside of the parentheses right here, which means what I'm actually adding to both sides is not 16, but I'm actually adding the 2 times the 16 on the left-hand side. So that's what I have to add on the right-hand side. That factor of 2 is going to be distributed to every single term inside the parentheses here. So that's why you have 2 times 16. If you do not multiply by that leading coefficient of 2, then you will not get the right answer. Okay, so with that being said, I continue on, and these three terms right here are going to turn into the 2 parentheses x plus the 4 quantity squared is equal to 22 plus 32. So 2 parentheses x plus 4 squared is equal to 22, and 32 is going to be 54. Now our goal is to find the x-intercepts. So what that means is I'm going to take and divide both sides by 2. So if I divide both sides by 2, I'm going to have x plus 4 quantity squared is now equal to 27. Go ahead and take the square root of both sides now to get rid of the power. I have x plus 4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 27. What is the square root of 27? Well, that's going to be 9 times 3. That 9 comes out as a 3, so I have x plus 4 is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of, let me rewrite that, sorry. Can't see that very easily. Plus or minus 3 square roots of 3. I'm not done yet because I'm still solving for x. So if I'm solving for x, I'm going to get rid of that 4 by subtracting it. And these are going to be my x-intercepts. Okay? Continuing on. Solve each quadratic equation by completing the square. Same exact thing. So step 1, my leading coefficient, or I should say my constant term is on the other side. So now I need my leading coefficient to be 1. My leading coefficient is 25. So I have to pull out a 25. 25 divided by 25 is a 1x squared. 30 divided by 25, they're both divisible by 5. So that's going to give you a 6 over 5x is equal to 12. Okay? Now, you can always use your calculator for that. Now we're going to go ahead and do sidebar. So we're going to take b divided by 2 and square it. My b value is now 6 over 5 divided by 2 squared. Use your calculator because I know you guys are going to mess this up. So that's 3/5, and now I'm going to square that. 3/5 gives us 9/25. Okay, so the 9/25 is what you're going to have on both sides on the parentheses there. So I have 25 times x squared plus 6/5 x plus 9/25 is equal to 12 plus, what am I actually adding? What I'm actually adding is 12 times, or 25 times 9/25. So that is going to give me 25 times 9/25. So these three terms are going to turn out to be 25 parentheses x plus, where is this coming from? Right here, 3/5 is equal to, those 25s cancel out, 12 plus 9. So I have 25 parentheses x plus 3/5 squared is equal to 21. So now to solve for this, I'm going to divide both sides by 25. So I have x plus 3/5 squared is equal to 21 over 25. Now we're going to take the square root of the top and of the bottom. Those cancel out, and I'm left with x plus 3/5 is equal to the square root of 21 over 5 plus or minus. Now I need to bring over that 3/5 by subtracting it. And then that is going to be your lovely little x-intercepts. Okay, 2 more problems and we're going to be done. Now, the next set of instructions that you are going to have, it says to find the vertex form and the vertex. So I don't want you to actually solve this. I just want you to put it in a different format. So how do we do that? We're going to replace y with 0. So this y is going to go away and it's going to become 0. Then we're going to do it exactly the way we did it last time. So we're going to bring the constant term over. So 1 is equal to x squared minus 8x. Then our leading coefficient has to be 1. It already is. So then we're going to go ahead and do our sidebar. So our sidebar is going to be our b divided by 2. So our b is 8. divided by 2 is 4. Squared is going to be 16. 16 is what we're going to tack on to both sides of our equation. So I have 17 is equal to, these three terms are going to turn into an x minus a 4 quantity squared. Now we're very close to vertex form. All we have to do is bring that 17 back over. So 0 is equal to x minus 4 squared minus 17. And replace the 0 with a y, and we're right back to where we were supposed to be. Here's my vertex form. So now tell me what's happening to this function. It's going to the right 4 units, and it's going to go down 17 to give me a vertex of positive 4, negative 17. Okay? So super easy compared to what you were doing for solving. Same exact concept here. Let the y be turned to 0. Next, our constant term, which is the 5, has to go to the other side. So that's going to be a 5 is equal to 2x squared minus 8x. Then we need to go fish and pull out our leading coefficient of 2 by division. So 2 divided by 2 is a 1x squared. 8 divided by 2 is a 4x. Then we're going to come over here and do our sidebar. Our sidebar is b divided by 2. b is going to be 4 now. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Squared is going to be 4. Now I'm going to add that inside my parentheses. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm going to add to this not just a 2, but a 2, or not just a 4, but a 2 times a 4. So 2 times 4 is 8, plus 5 is equal to 2 parentheses. These three terms are going to turn into x minus 2 quantity squared. 8 plus 5 is 13. Bring over the 13, replace that with a 0. Replace the y with the 0 with a y. This is vertex form. Now what is happening to this function? This function is going to the right 2 and down 13, so I have a vertex of 2, negative 13. Okay? Tonight's homework is 4-6 worksheet 2, complete the square, vertex form, and X-intercepts.